Hello and welcome everyone to Kerbal Space Program RP-1. This is a real solar system and Realism Overhaul playthrough, and RP-1 is kind of a career mode for realistic progression. I am new to this mod pack. I've played through the tutorial and messed around for quite a few hours, so I at least have my feet wet, but I am pretty much a noob to the RP-1 world, and I'm excited to dive in fully in this YouTube playthrough. That being said, I'm not going to walk through the install process. There is a really great guide on the RP-1 wiki, so use that for the tutorial. I'm not going to go over too much on the how to install. I will put my mod list in the description down below because I have added a few, mostly quality of life mods. There's a few that might change a couple things, but for the most part, it's just quality of life stuff and stuff I'm used to playing with in Kerbal Space Program. We're gonna call this the Kerbal Space Program 1, KSP 1. And difficulty options wise, we will think about it. What do we want for our flag, first of all? Let's go with... I mean, let's just do the RP-1 logo for now. So difficulty options wise, I'm going to go with normal rather than moderate. And then there's a couple changes I feel like... Let's see, I like focus follows click. And what was it? Quick saves. I like... there was something that I changed that was recommended. Oh yeah, I can turn these off, and then we can turn those on for specific vessels. I'll leave failures on. And supplies. I've heard electrical charge can get a little spammy. I also have KOS installed in case we want to do some programming. I played with that a tiny bit. Was it? Oh yeah, it's this. So they suggest maybe for new players to go down to like operational or prototype, but nah, we're gonna be overwhelmed with all the engines on speculative style. And this is the default for this, so I'm okay with that. Failures are not optional. Oh, and then we don't want Werner's checker to always open. We'll use that when we get into the later things. So that's it. We're going to go for it. Go ahead and start. So I'm excited to get our space program off the ground. And yeah, as far as the type of player that I am, we're going to do permit all for KOS. We're going to say don't show again because we will walk through all these steps together. But I am not a super huge like rocket enthusiast. I don't know that much about rocket history. I don't know much about dates. I don't know much about names of certain rockets. You know, I know words like Titan and Atlas and Soyuz, but beyond that, I'm not that knowledgeable. Despite all my hours in KSP, I don't spend a lot of time looking up rocket stuff. So what that means is I'm going to build weirdo rockets that probably do not reflect real life counterparts. I'm not trying to do like a historical playthrough, if that makes sense. We're just here to have fun. We're here to enjoy the gameplay mechanics of RP-1. And, you know, the rockets we build will be at least somewhat analogous to real life rockets, if not, you know, the same types of things. And I might do some wonky Kerbal Space Program style stuff that NASA would never have done. We'll find out, but it'll be fun. The first thing we're going to do is dive into our programs here. And I'll walk people through a little bit if they've never played RP-1 before, kind of what the basics are. So you get these programs that take up slots, and we start with 5 slots, so we can only take 2 of these. So you would only take X-plane research if you're interested in working on planes. I'm just going to go with rockets. We'll get to planes at some point, but we're going to start with rockets, and then you can determine, so you get daily funding throughout so many years with these programs. And if you do a shorter period, then you get that funding over a shorter amount of time, right? Like we can get, you know, 32,000 funds in our first year instead of normal, which only gives us 15,000. I have very little experience with this mod, and so I'm not really sure how quickly we're going to be able to do these things. So I'm going to go with fast, because that's what they recommended in the tutorial. And that gets us a little bit more money, you know, sooner, but it also means that if we get to the deadline and we haven't finished it, our reputation starts plummeting. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but we're going to do both on fast. And that uses up this confidence resource, which you can accumulate by doing more contracts, optional contracts. So both of these will pay out about 250,000 funds over the course of 6 years. They're both 6 years, I think. Is that right? Yeah, they're both 6 years. So that's how much time we have to get this stuff done. And then we can switch over to mission control and look at our available missions. And we've got the first launch, which is optional, but why would we not take that? And then the Kármán line, which is to get to 100 kilometers. So we'll take those bad boys, and then we will head over to the VAB to work on assembling our first rocket. I like the sounding rocket stage. I know some people get tired of it eventually, but, well, I'm not tired of it yet, so we're gonna hop right in. So one thing I want to note is that RP-1 uses a lot of different systems. So if you haven't played RP-1, I highly recommend walking through the tutorial. They walk you through building your first rocket. They walk you through all sorts of stuff. You know, there's all sorts. I mean, look at this. Look at these menus. Look at how tall this part menu is. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. So we're gonna have to work our way through, but right now we are going to want a science core avionics, because I can turn this off. That's actually really handy. I didn't realize those could be turned off. So science core, we'll leave this description on while we read it. Basically, it doesn't allow you to control things like gimbal or roll or anything else. It's only for controlling. Also, do these click through? Yeah, they do. That's annoying. Click through blocker doesn't always work, I feel like. Yeah. Anyway. Go away, KOS. Anyway, yeah, so this is if we want to command things like gimbal and roll and, you know, pitch, and science core is just if we want to hit go and it all happens. Science core allows you to still return science. What else does it say? I think that's it. And I also discovered, I think you can still stage things with science cores. You just can't control them. And we'll do the start of that. Because what else would it be on? I don't know. Oh, it was on near Earth. Okay. So we want the starting version of that. And then I don't know how we ended up selecting the hollow fillet cylinder, but we'll just do a cone because it's going to be the top of our rocket. And the electrical charge amount, we're just going to go with 100 kilojoules, so it only weighs 450 grams. And you can hit apply to preserve dimensions, or apply and resize to fit, and that would actually make the part smaller because we only have a little bit of electric charge. So instead, I'd like to, and we'll close the integration menu here. Instead, I'd like to make the shape first. And I don't know how big exactly we're gonna make it. Around 0.3 meters, I think, is the size of the initial sounding rocket engine that we get. So then I'll do 100, apply, preserve dimensions. And then I think we can change, oops. I think we can change the, yeah, the electric charge is down to 16 now. Can I do 100? Yeah, just barely. All right, so that might be our probe core initially. And now we will grab ourselves a procedural tank. And these bad boys have all sorts of different types and all sorts of different resources you end up needing. But what you can do is you can choose the tank type. We need a high pressure steel fuselage, which is gonna weigh more than, or cost more than. No, it weighs more than the regular types, because we need high pressure fuel for our first engine. Now, there's a few different engine options here. There's the Aerobie. We could start with something else. I don't know. The Aerobie is the lightest one, and it just feels like the right one to start with. But we could technically start with something else, I guess. Like the Veronique? Or the ORM 65. I don't even know what half these are. Sorry, that's not true. I don't know what most of these are. And these are all like turbojet stuff. And the A4 is the only big rocket we have access to at first. The next largest one is the Veronique, which is kind of a medium. And then we've got the tiny little Aerobie. So we'll just start with the Aerobie. You know, it's the classic. So then once you have your high pressure fuel tank, you can hit fill, whack Corporal Aerobie, and then that will fill it with the proper fuel types that you need for your engine. Now, a really important part of RP-1 is engines, they can fail. And so there's this reliability number, and you can see here it says MTBF. That's mean time before failure is 5.6 minutes. That means if you were to just run a bunch of these a bunch of times, on average, one would be pooping out every 5.6 minutes. But its rated burn time is only 47 seconds. So that means that the chance that it actually fails during its own, burn time is going to be whatever 5.6 minutes divided by 47 seconds is. It's 1 in every 6 or so is going to fail somewhere along its burn time. And then the ignition chance is 90%. I'm not sure. I think we had that setting so that at least on the launch pad, ignitions always work. I don't know exactly what that setting was that we left off, but that was the default, so I'm okay with that. And then on top of there being so many engines in RP-1, there's different configurations for the same engine. So these are kind of like upgrades or side grades that we can unlock later with more tech. You can see here that we cannot purchase them because we lack the tech. I need post-war rocketry testing or early rocketry to be able to purchase these two. So for now, all we can do is the basic one, and here we have our mech jeb, delta V stats. And so yeah, all that to say, we can run it for 47 seconds, but they give you a free 5 seconds because engines are, sometimes they take time to spool up and such. So you can always add 5 to that number before the reliability starts going down. So we can get a solid 52 seconds of still fully consistent burn time, and then on top of that we could add a few more seconds because it's not like the MTBF just goes to 0 immediately. We can simulate it and test it, and we'll show you. So I'm going to increase the length then until our burn time here gets up to that 52 seconds we were talking about. And then why don't we just go to 62 seconds so we can kind of exemplify what the MTBF actually does over that time. So we'll make it a little bit longer. We might end up needing to shorten this. And honestly, we've already got a lot of what we need here. Obviously, it needs to be aerodynamically stable because our center of lift is at the top, so it's gonna flip right over. So we need some fins on the bottom. So we'll grab these procedural wings, which I guess are already defaulted to something I crafted when I was kind of playing before. But the procedural wing thing, you highlight it and you hit J, and then you can move kind of how big the front is, where the back is. Then you can move the yellow edges. This kind of moves the whole end of it. And then these kind of mess with the I don't know if that's called the root or something, or the tip, the leading edge, kind of how sharp it is or how far out it goes. And then you can also modify that to be like triangular or biconvex or rounded. What is biconvex? I kind of like biconvex. It feels a little bit better. I don't know if these have actual arrow implications or if it's just graphical look. I'm not really sure, but we'll go with that. And then, I mean, honestly, these are probably bigger than they need to be because we've got our center of lift way down here already. It could probably be a little bit higher. And then another thing you can also do is change the mass strength multiplier. And you can see that, you know, we've got 1657 of Atmo delta V. Whereas if we go up to the 0.35 that they were already at, we've only got 1351. So right now the fins are adding a lot of weight. So we'll go down to 0.2 and see if we can get away with that. And then we'll make these a bit smaller. We could also go with only having 3 fins instead of 4 fins, because 3 fins are also stable. So maybe we'll do 3 fins and just go with that. I do love me a good 4-way symmetry, but I think 3 fins is good for our first rocket. I think that's what the tutorial has you doing anyway. And even these are probably still bigger than they need to be honest. So let's make them a bit smaller. Okay, so that would be too small, right? That center of lift is way up there. But I think that should be fairly stable. Go a little bit longer. Okay, so there we go. We've got our fins, we've got our engine, we've got our avionics. We need science. So science also is a little different. I need to turn off the setting that opens this. There's a setting that you can turn off that I forgot to turn off, where this opens every time you touch avionics. I don't like that. So we go over to the configure experiments, and a science core, or the avionics in general, can carry a few experiments. So we want to grab the barometer, which only needs 1 watt of EC. And we want to grab the thermometer. Those are the only 2 we have right now. And they don't cost very much. They do add 100 grams, so our delta V probably changed a tiny bit. Or is that too light for it to have changed? It changed by 1. Okay, and then we exit this. And now you can see that all the experiments are stopped. The cool part about RP-1, at least this is what I've heard, is that you can just, like, science collects even when things are on rails. You don't need to, like, activate it, but you do have to make sure that they're waiting, so that they're kind of active and waiting to be in a situation where they can collect science. All of the science below 40 kilometers has already been collected on Earth, and so you have to be above 40 kilometers to start collecting any science. All right, and now we shall. Also, the thickness. These seem too fat. So we're gonna go thickness. Or wait, which one is it? Is it the thickness? Yeah. So they're 0.075. Let's change it to 0.03. What's that look like? That looks almost too thin now. 0.05? There we go, that feels a little bit better. I don't actually think that changes the mass. Okay, and then are we missing anything? Probably. That's how KSP works. You're always forgetting something. And then we'll get one of these little bottom holder launch clamps. You can hit the B key to bring it down. I like to bring it a lot further down. It looks weird to me when those things are like 10 meters tall. And this should work. So, all we can do right now is simulate it. Actually, producing this craft is going to be a lot more work. But what we can also do is name it. We're going to name it the Aero B. No, that would be lame to have a space. Aerobi is a boring name, but we'll just name it Aerobi for now. Oh, my creativity apparently is non-existent today. And we're just going to test this so we can see kind of what it looks like. So to simulate, you open up your integration info tab here, and then you can simulate, and you can enable part failures or not. We want to leave those on, and we'll go ahead and simulate it. I think my staging's messed up though. I need to activate it before we release the clamp. I also have Action Group Extended that I installed. We need to get rid of that window. Where's that window? Crap. Did I miss it? Waypoint Manager. What's this? I don't know what that is. Engine Group. Oh, there you go. Okay, so the ones that I generally have open is the Delta V stats up here. I also have Kerbal Engineer Redux because I like just it's a little smaller to have some info. So I've got info about like the ground here. I've got info about my ship up here. I've got some info about orbit up here. And then I have a MechJeb readout of atmospheric drag because KER isn't very good at that. But yeah, let's see how this thing flies. We're just simulating here, and if we select our avionics, we can see that it's waiting for us to be high enough to get data. And then if we look at our engine part here, we can see that we're collecting flight data. And the more flight data you have on an engine, the more consistent it gets for future missions. And then we can see that MTBF is still 5.6 minutes here, and that's going to change once we get past 52 seconds. You'll see. You'll see how that works. So we are at 47. It's still, you notice it's still at 5.6 minutes, but once we get past 52, that'll start going down. But it doesn't go down like insanely rapidly. You know, now we're 5 seconds past, now it's starting to really go down. So you can pretty consistently get a few extra seconds of burn time, but you know, going to 64 seconds doubled the failure chance per second, basically. And we got an apoapsis of 67,000, which is not enough to reach our Kármán line. That's because we are still missing an important part of the classic aerobie design, which is a booster. So the first thing I'm going to do is reduce our burn time down to closer to 50 something. Let's see. So we said we get 52 for free. So let's go to like 56. I feel pretty safe with that. So we'll do 55. So another important thing to note is that there's a whole world. There's so many worlds that we haven't gotten into yet, but you have to tool your parts. And when you tool your parts, they get cheaper for the future. And if you make parts that are untooled, they cost a lot more and they take more time. And so basically, if you're only ever going to use a part once, you might not tool it, but a lot of times you're going to pay more now to tool them so that they build faster and cost less, and then that part is tooled forever. For tanks, if you make them a little longer, you have to tool that tank as well, but it'll be cheaper than if you make a different diameter. So it's kind of like changing the length of your fuel tanks is a little cheaper than changing the diameter. And tooling costs are usually far larger than your actual rocket cost. You know, we can see this rocket only costs 129, but if the parts are tooled, it'll only cost 36, which is basically free, right? The main costs are actually going to be our engineers building them, and the rollout and like reconditioning of pad costs. Like those are the things that end up adding up, and the tooling costs. The actual craft itself often is fairly cheap. Anyway, so we'll get into that here in a minute, but for now... Oh, KO, what is this? There's a whole KOS thing going on here that I'm not gonna worry about right now. And yeah, what were we gonna do? Add a booster. So we'll go ahead and add a hollow interstage adapter, and we'll bring that down to a little tiny diameter. Actually, I'll do a 0.2 because that graphically fits with the engine. And then you can also make it shorter. which I think affects the mass, right? 5 kilograms. We make it taller. That's still 5 kilograms. So the height has nothing to do with it? Well, that has a mass of 15. That has a mass of 18. Okay, so the height has very little to do with mass. But it does technically matter. Okay, so then we're gonna grab ourselves our... We only have one booster available right now, which is the old... No, sorry, we have the R103. And then we have a Tiny Tim. And obviously the Tiny Tim is the way to go because this is way too light. You would need quite a few of these to get anything done. One of these is only enough for 50 delta V. Which is something, but it's not a lot. So we'll get our Tiny Tim here. I guess we will have that be the proper diameter. And then that is probably going to throw our center of lift off. Yep, so now our center of lift is too high, and that's gonna cause instability. Which means we're gonna need another set of fins on the old Tiny Tim here. And that should bring our center of line in healthy range. And we will decouple at the same moment we launch Tiny Tim. And then what we're gonna need to do is hot stage. So we haven't talked about ullage yet, or ullage. I actually don't know how to pronounce it, which is a little embarrassing, but I don't think I've ever heard a human say this word. I've read it a bunch of times in the last week, playing the tutorial. Basically, the fuel in this tank has to be settled to the bottom of the tank. So what will happen, if we just decouple like normal, the aerodynamic forces pushing on the top of the rocket are actually going to cause it to experience deceleration, which means all the fuel is going to slam to the front. Think when you slam on the brakes in your car, you kind of get slammed towards the front of the car. That's the same idea here. If you're not actually pushing on the gas, then everything slammed towards the front of the rocket. Now there's air bubbles and gas bubbles at the bottom, and the fuel doesn't work, and the engine burns out, and it doesn't work. So you need to light a lot of engines while they are under acceleration, which means you have to do it before you stage the next stage. So that's what we're doing here. And we'll see if this thing can get to 100,000. I think it should. I mean, this is the classic design. You could always cluster together a bunch of Tiny Tims if you wanted to go full KSP, but we'll go with this classic design for now and see how it fares. I'll go ahead and simulate this. See how it goes. I'm really excited for this series, guys. I love KSP. Like I said, I have over 800 hours in it. I've done a lot of modded playthroughs before, but I've always been scared of RP-1, but after diving into it a little bit in the last couple days, I've only gotten more obsessed. So yeah, we're just gonna try launching this thing and see how it goes. You know, we might let MechJeb do it because this is such a short time. So this is a good time to talk about the ascent guidance. You can engage the autopilot and have it auto stage. I guess in this case we more just need auto staging than the pilot, and it'll stop auto staging at 0. We do want it to support hot staging with a lead time of maybe 0.5 seconds. And then drop solids early is interesting. So solid fuel boosters, their thrust starts at full or near full. And basically they have a thrust curve. They don't do the same thrust over the whole time. And towards the end, often they go down to a very tiny % of thrust. So dropping solids early means that it'll drop it rather than hanging onto the dead weight on the back that's basically not providing any thrust anymore, but it technically is still burning. It'll drop it slightly before when it's down to 0.05 seconds of its full rated thrust, which could be 5 seconds worth of crappy thrust, you know. It's probably not that extreme, but that's the idea. So now I should be able to hit spacebar and it'll do everything for us. And it didn't do anything for us. Interesting. What went wrong here? What went wrong? We turned on we did engage autopilot. We have auto stage on. Stop auto staging at stage 0. Delays, fairing, support hot stage. I actually don't know. Oh, there we go. Okay. Must have screwed something else up. No, it worked. But yeah, just for argument, let's show what happens if we turn off drop solids early. It might be hard to notice just because of how fast it all happens anyway. No, you could see there, it held on to Tiny Tim quite a bit longer without the drop solids early. If we do the drop solids early, yeah, you can see that the Tiny Tim has a little bit of thrust left in it. The other thing I haven't done is spin stabilize, so this rocket is going to experience a little bit of tilting and not perfect straight upness, but that's okay. That's okay. And we'll see our science data. We'll go ahead and keep that open so we can see our progress towards 100 kilometers. We should get to 100 kilometers with this build. It is the classic build. And we'll get a little bit of science data for our troubles. I might turn this off. I don't really know if I'm going to do the auto screenshot thing very often. And there we go. Apoapsis 103. We barely made it. Wow. I'm wondering... Wow. So drag losses were 383. Let's try making the nose a little longer and see if our drag losses go down. Because we did lose quite a bit to drag. So we go a little bit longer. And then back down to 100 kilojoules. Oh, there's another thing I forgot. There's another a weight saving mechanic, which is, I really need to close that thing. It is communication. Yeah, there's a whole menu here. So the transmit power is right now 30 dBm, which we do not need. We can bump that down by quite a bit. And that gives us some more delta V. At 30 dBm, we've got 1610, and at 20, we've got 1621. So there's another 20 delta V, or sorry, 10 delta V that we can get for free. And if you're curious what amount of dBm you need, you can pop open the, where is it? Let me close some of these things. This one, real antennas, and then you can where, or maybe it's not that button. Where's the antenna helper? No, I think it is that one, right? Am I making this up? Oh, antenna planning. There's a menu right there. That's what it is. Okay. Sorry, wrong button. So then you can plan this out and you can see like, okay, what's the, you know, the max distance if I do from the Aerobie to the DSN tracking station. And then we plug in distances. So at 1,000 kilometers, it can still transmit. What about 10,000 kilometers? Plan. So there's no connection at 10,000 kilometers. What about at 1,000 kilometers? Yes. What about at 5,000 kilometers? So you can see at 5,000 kilometers, you're down to 8 out of 32 bits per second. So I don't know what TX-RX means, to be perfectly frank. But if we were to go, you know, higher, oh, here we can just kind of measure. We can see like when we have best connection. But we're only going to about 100 kilometers, right? And so if I type in, let's say 150, then we can probably, or I have to hit plan. We can probably go way down. I mean, we can literally have the lowest transmit power possible and still connect at 150 kilometers. So that means we'll just go down to 20 dBm. There's not really any delta V savings past that anyway. But always consider your antenna, is what I'm getting at. And then go ahead and save this. So we've made that a little longer and pointier. We've considered our antenna. Is there anything else I can do to eke some more delta V out of this? I don't really think so. I mean, I could make the fins lighter, yet still. But I kind of like the fins the way they were. But maybe we can go down to 0.15 on both of these. As long as the fins aren't overheating or breaking, then that's free real estate. Free delta V. Okay, so engage autopilot. Beautiful. And then I also have time warp. We can test this a little faster. Basically, the last time we did this, 103 kilometers technically completes the contract, but I want a little bit of wiggle room because, you know, let's say the engine burned out 2 seconds before the end of its journey. Like, yeah, 105. Well, we've also still got, I feel like I have more drag losses this time. That wouldn't make any sense. This does make it, but just barely. I kind of want to go a little bit further. Oh, anyway, we can also see our science is running, and we're collecting science. Now that we are above 40 kilometers. But this does do it. I think we might be fine. I don't know. Part of me wants to stage something else. I could double Tiny Tim. I could do this. I'm kind of curious how this works. I'm not actually gonna do this. This is us having some fun and testing. And that one goes there. So theoretically, this is gonna actually work. I mean, is it that crazy? I don't know. Maybe this isn't crazy. It's just the kind of madness we might need. Oh. So in this case, we failed to ignite the aerobie because of high dynamic pressure because we were going too fast. Aerobies can't light very well when you're going that fast, I guess. So there's an ignition penalty for Q is what that means. Wow. Wait a second. So what's the normal... When you only have one Tiny Tim, what does that turn into? Interesting. It looks like we might have to do the slow-mo feature, but it looks like the chance goes down to about 80%. Just having the one Tiny Tim. Okay, we'll go back to the normal mode here. But yeah, what's the... Let's throw on slow-mo here. So over here in time tools, you can, or time control, which is a mod that I have, you can set up slow motion rate. We'll go to like 10%. Gives us 10 times the amount of time to see stuff. And then you can set up some hotkeys, which I have on shift, because these hotkeys will mess with other stuff in other windows and views and scenes. So best to have it on shift something. So we'll go slow motion, engage autopilot. Go ahead and pin this, and let's take a close look at the ignition chance. So it's at 90 just for being in the air. Wait, what just happened? Hold on. I feel like it's... I guess that's part of why the hot staging is useful, is you want to ignite it before those penalties come into play. It also got kicked to the side from the launch clamp, which happens sometimes, and it's very annoying. Okay, so it was like, it was at 85% when it ignited. So that's kind of a real life situation of why you don't use two Tiny Tims in a row. And then I think I'm gonna change the drop solids early to 0.03. I think we're losing a little bit of thrust from that. And then I have hyper warp. Gets us going real fast here. And okay, yeah, that got us a little bit more, 108,000 this time. Sweet. So this is going to complete our first contract to get to the Carmen line. Love it. Go ahead and save this as Ep.1 Carmen line. It's not the most interesting title, but having the contract that you're trying to complete with it is pretty useful because it gives you some idea of what the craft can do. Now, on to integration. So we're going to have to tool this bad boy. So we'll just go ahead and tool all. And that will spend our unlock credit. Unlock credit is produced from research. So essentially, as you research more stuff, you get credits with which you can pay for toolings and pay for unlocking new parts, but you can't pay for salaries or actually building the craft or things like that. And now we need an LC. So a launch complex is needed. And this is going to be called Little Guys. Or maybe sounding pad. No, I liked Little Guys. So the maximum tonnage I could set to 2. What does extra pad cost? Oh, you could build additional pads for the same launch complex? Interesting. And then the height limit, what's our actual vessel stats? So we are 7.3 by 1 by 1, basically. So I'll go 2 meters on the length and width, and then height. Could go up to 10. Could stay at 9. I mean, you can see the difference. Like if we only had 7 meters height limit, build cost is way lower, the construction time, yearly upkeep's only 150. But if we go to 10 meters, that allows us to do some more nonsense with future rockets. So I kind of like giving us some margin there. And then there's also the resources here. What are the resources that will be available on the pad? Now this is mostly for liquid fueled rockets. You'll notice that the NG-NC for solid rockets is not on this list. It's only the ANFA and the IRFNA and nitrogen is also just free. So the thing that's interesting to me is that it automatically goes to an amount that is 250, even though you need about twice as much IRFNA as ANFA. So to me, it makes sense that this would be like, 150, a little bit lower, and this would be 300 or something. And then that can support a little bit more than what we're doing right now. And we don't need to rate it for humans. And the little guy's launch complex is good to be built. Now we can back out of the VAB here. And then if we open up 2 important windows, we've got our budget over here, and then this is our Space Center management. And construction of little guys is on the way. It's going to take 33 days before that's done. And I don't think staff have anything to do with that. You can also rush it, so work gets done faster, but then it costs more. So there's that. And we also have 2 science points, so let's go figure out what we want to research first. I did get the RP-1 tech tree compacted mod, which makes this tech tree much more readable, in my opinion. So our early nodes that we could grab are early solid rocket engines, which gives us this Aerojet, which is kind of like a better Tiny Tim, and separation motors, which are also very useful for providing ullage. There's post-war rocketry testing, which gives us a couple alternatives to the A4 that are stronger than the A4, and then these 2, which are small rocket motors to power experimental high-speed aircraft, including the X-1. And then this guy powered the Viking sounding rocket. And then you get some upgrades. The A4 can become the A9. ORM upgrade, U1250 upgrade, and the Aerobi upgrade. So that's useful. And then early tracking systems gets you an avionics upgrade, which is pretty huge because the mass goes down. The cost goes up, but the mass and power cost go down for your avionics. And that's a pretty huge deal because that provides a lot of the weight of your ship. But you'll notice it's just a procedural science core upgrade. That's not an upgrade to reduce our near Earth avionics. That's this one. So this one will be a big research for us to improve like our V2 rockets that are using the near Earth avionics that we actually control. Our downrange rockets, I guess they're called. And then this is a new science experiment. And I believe we need the advanced biological capsule for one of the contracts. But that all being said, I liked what I did last time when I kind of played a little bit, which was just starting with the post-war material science. And the reason that's useful is it unlocks all these guys. And it also just gives us the aluminum fuselage tanks. So being able to have lighter fuel tanks is pretty huge. They do cost a little bit more, but, you know, having more powerful rockets is worth it, right? And then it also gives an engineer efficiency upgrade when integrating vehicles and constructing new facilities. Increases minimum efficiency for LCs by 3% and maximum efficiency by 5%. So we'll go ahead and start with that research. So maybe it said when constructing new facilities. I'm curious if... Huh. But you don't assign engineers to work on constructing these, so I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe when you revamp one? I don't know. So our current, so just to kind of summarize what all these are, the facilities is our cost, integration teams is our engineers, research teams is our researchers, obviously astronauts is astronauts. That's all clear. Subsidy is what the game is paying you, the game, you know, what the NASA is paying you to, or I'll call it CASA because it's the Krydax Space Agency, Aeronautics. Anyway, it's just like they'll help pay for your facilities and your staff. However, this will not help you pay for rollout and air launch prep, constructions, or actually paying for the cost of ships. Nor will it help you pay for like tooling or things like that if you are out of unlock cost. And you can see that as you have higher reputation, it increases your subsidy. So you essentially make money off of contracts because they give you a higher subsidy, which then allows you to do, you either pay for more staff or if you're already in the negative, it'll just offset more of that cost so your overall balance goes up. So I don't know if that made sense, but basically we want to use up all our subsidy is the idea, because if you're not using your subsidy, you're losing it. Use it or lose it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to staff and we're going to hire some researchers. And you can hold shift to hire 10. Applicants exist sometimes. I don't know exactly how that works, but when they exist, you don't need to pay anything to hire people. You do need to pay the salary for these people, but the hiring process is free. So we'll spend all of our applicants on, and you can shift click for 10. So that we've got 20. And then I think we'll hire more, potentially. We are using up all our subsidy, but I think I want science to get done pretty quick. So we're gonna hire another 10. And then that puts our first research getting done in November instead of February. So that's nice. I could even hire 10 more, and that would put us in August. What the heck? I'm gonna hire 10 more. Our balance is pretty low, but it's fine. Everything's fine. Yeah, there you go. And now basically we have nothing to do other than wait, because we can't work on building our craft until we have a launch complex for it. Like you can see if I were to try to build our aerobie here, it needs to be built in a launch complex. So we can't do anything with that yet. Our engineers have nothing they could do, so there's no point in hiring them yet. So we shall just warp to complete. I will warn you, whenever you warp, it flashes a lot, so seizure warning if that's, you know, a problem. Because it gets a really flashy. Alright, now our launch complex is complete. We're all the way in February now, but that's okay. We'll get our aerobie built by hitting launch. And this is where you would modify your launch complex if you wanted it to change it to be a little bit bigger, allow for more maximum tonnage. The interesting thing is the minimum tonnage exists as well, so you really have to kind of consider what you're doing with all this stuff. Now, it'll say vessel cannot be built. It contains parts that are still in development. These have been researched, but they're not unlocked yet, so we have to spend 7 unlock credit. Later on, parts get more expensive, but the early ones are all cheap. So it added it to the integration. Now, you can also add it to plans somewhere. And then if you had max engineers, which is what we will have, it's telling us it will take 35 days to create this craft and then 2 days to roll it out. I am curious. There's a whole plans thing. I don't know how you save something into plans. I forget how you do that. Is it like shift click on save? I may have to look that up, because there's a way you can save a craft into plans and then you can add it to the basically build list from here without having to go into the VAB. So if there are things that you build regularly, you could just put them in your plans and you could just be like, okay, queue up the Aerobi, queue up the V2, you know, that sort of thing. All right, and now we need to hire engineers, because right now we got nobody working on building stuff. And we have a max of 10 here, so we'll hire 10. And we have to assign them. Right now they're not assigned to the launch complex, so we have to assign them all to the little guy's pad, or launch complex. And then that works. And you can see our vessel rate mixed with the efficiency that they have is only at 10%. And that will increase over time. So if we warp here, we should see that the actual date that this completes on will change. Right now it's completing on 3/9. And you can see we're up to 10.1% efficiency. I don't know if it'll change by a full day. It might. It's still on 3/9, but we're up to 10.6% efficiency. I'm curious. Basically, as their efficiency is going up, they're getting more work done per day, and so it could get your completion date a little lower. But in this case, I don't know if it did. All right, and then the Aerobi's done. You can roll it out here. Oh, here's where we can add it to plans if we wanted to. So I'll go ahead and roll that out. That takes 2 days. What's our budget like right now? It's not great. We're spending a lot on research, but plus 50 a day. I don't really have any concept for what's good here, but that's okay. We'll warp to complete here. And then you never want to launch at night, so we'll warp to the morning. Perfect. A nice sunny day for our first actual launch. And yeah, you can just hit launch down there. There's also... Where is it? Somewhere in your launch complexes, you can see... Yeah, there's different launch pads on each launch complex. And so we can rename launch pad 1, and you can also change where it actually is, like the actual launch site, for Kerbal constructs or whatever. But we'll name this just little guys pad 1 for reducing confusion. And then yeah, we're good to launch. Let's do it. Oh, I love this game. I'm so excited for where this career is going. And let's hope we don't have any engine failures. As long as we don't, we should be good to go. We'll open up our ascent guidance, engage autopilot, and by the way, how am I going to be playing it when it comes to like autosaves and stuff? Because, you know, we could just cheese it. If there are engine failures and that's why something goes horribly wrong, I will not reload a save. If the reason something goes horribly wrong is I forgot to hit autopilot or I accidentally hit spacebar too many times, I will reload that. I'm not playing Iron Man here, you know, like I don't mind reloading a save for that sort of thing. Or if there was just some totally unforeseen circumstance that like was more a video game related thing. However, I do want to emulate the realism of like failures happen and maybe you didn't plan for something and that's why it failed. Those are the types of failures I want to actually accept and not reload saves. Just so you know kind of where I'm at with all that. And I mean, we might as well keep this pinned here and we can look at the aerobie stats as well. And let's launch this baby. All right, everything went good. So this should be a successful first contract. Assuming, I guess it could fail mid-flight. It's not guaranteed. It won't. Oh, never mind. We don't know until it's over whether we made it or not. So far, so good. Seconds. Take a nice little screenshot here. All right, I think we did it. 90 and 105. 104. Hopefully the drag reduces fast enough. Yeah, I think we're fine. 103.4, 103.3, 103.2, and we are okay. All right, so I'll time warp a little bit to get up, or I guess we can just hyper warp to get to Apo here. Collecting quite a bit of science, actually. We've already got 0.4, 0.2, 0.2 collected. 95K. And click, 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 click. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Boom. Kármán line rocket. So we get a few contracts complete here. First launch, uncrewed speed record of 900 meters a second, altitude record 40 kilometers, 60 and 100 kilometers, Kármán line. And we get some leaders available, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But yeah, we don't want to immediately just ditch the craft. You can do range safety to blow up the ship, but we're not going to do that yet because we're still collecting science. And we'll keep collecting science until we drop back below 40 kilometers. So we'll wait for that. And I also want to point out, we didn't collect all the possible science. So we could launch a couple more of these to collect the rest of that science. I do think we'll get that science with different launches though, so we're not going to need that. So we'll range safety and go back to the Space Center here. Successful career sounding rocket launchers. It's wonderful. We got 3.5 science. 23 reputation, so now our subsidy is higher. You do lose a percentage of your reputation per day, or something like that, so that's also something to keep an eye out for. And then, I don't know why the debris don't, like that's just the launch part. I don't know why it doesn't always auto-recover. But yeah, now we can see our new missions. There's a lot of options here. And some of them are intermediate versus difficult. So you can see here, this is an altitude sounding rocket that asks you to get 80 kilometers with 75 units of payload, whereas the difficult is 130 kilometers with 75 units of payload. And once you take the difficult one, these are repeatable contracts. You can see here that it has the elapsed versus expected days. So you can do this contract every 90 days to get some reputation and some, what's that called? Confidence. And so it's worth thinking about, like, once you've established a rocket that can do these, you can keep doing them to get some rewards. So like, it's worth designing one that can do this, and then you're going to want to make one every 90 days. So and if you go longer than 90 days, the reward goes up. as well. And if you're less than 90 days, the reward will be smaller. So, you know, it encourages you to do it on time. But if you go like once a year, it'll still give you a good, you know, it'll give you double the reward or something. Anyway, there are a few other options. These are the required, you know, you can see here optional versus required. So like these two, low space film return, low space biological experimentation, those are required for suborbital. And then these are required for early rocket development. Now, I think probably the simplest one right now, the downrange milestone is going to be a little trickier. I know from experience. Because you need to build a multi-stage rocket for this. And it has to have like 6 kilometers a second of delta V. So that's a lot of delta V. I think the simpler one is going to be probably this one. Because this one's just 150 kilometers downrange with 500 units of sounding payload. So basically this is like my V2 rocket style thing. And then we can, you know, use a similar vehicle to get to the downrange milestone later. And I'm definitely not going to do the difficult one. I think this is the better one to start with. So that'll be the first contract we'll do. And so they're going to recondition the pad. So we're still paying them a little bit. I guess you don't have to pay them as much to recondition a pad. Or something like that. Because we're only paying them 3.4. I'm just going to waste 6 days here because I'm curious if that goes to 0. Oh, that must have been under constructions. I'm dumb. Anyway, so what's next? Let's pick our next science. What path do we want to take here? I think I'm going to need these because I'd rather use the XLR-41 sooner rather than later. So let's do post-war rocketry testing and then early solid rocket, and then we'll do early tracking systems after that. We're already getting out into 1952 territory, so we're going to need more researchers. For now, we just need a V2 style rocket. I also am probably not going to finish this contract in this episode because generally I'm not going to be super strict on how long these episodes are, but you know, if they're over 2 hours, that's probably too long. So I'm aiming more for like the 1 hour-ish range. But yeah, we'll make a new one here. Oh, you know, let me fix the setting for the avionics. So it's in the difficulty options. I think it's RP-1. Procedural avionics windows opens. Yeah, don't do that. Thank you. I just don't like how much it fills my screen with garbage every time I click. You can open it yourself over here. Because a lot of times you don't need to change it, you need to change something else. So, for this rocket, we need to carry a sounding payload, which we probably want to put at the top to be heavy. So that'll be our mass. And then we don't have aluminum yet. So we just do steel fuselage, and then we, how do we do this again? Choose tank type? No. Where is it? Am I missing it? Tank UI, there we go. And then at the bottom, we've got sounding payload somewhere. At least I thought we did. Am I? Am I going crazy? Have I lost my marbles? How do we put the sounding payload in this again? I literally just did it the other day. Oh, does it need to be high pressure? I can't remember. Maybe it does. Yeah. So it's got to be a high pressure tank. All right, and this needs to be 500 units of sounding payload. So we're gonna make this smooth cone. And see, here's the real question. What size are we gonna make this rocket? So we're gonna I don't want to wait till we have the XLR, so I'll use the A4. It looks like 1.3 meters is the profile size. So I guess we'll make this a 1.3 meter rocket. And then we'll make this longer so that it can hold 500 units, and then we can type in 500 units. I'm gonna do 500.1 because I'm worried about rounding errors in this game. Maybe that's not necessary, but now another thing I need to point out about the avionics is they can only control so much mass, and avionics are very expensive to tool. So what we're probably going to end up doing is making this able to control more mass than it needs to be able to, so that we can modify, you know, or make similar rockets that are still under 20 tons that this avionics could control. 20 might be too much, but we'll start with something like that. And we'll do like 400. Not enough volume. Okay, so this needs to be bigger. So what about that? What if I... So the avionics need to be pretty big for near Earth. Is that big enough? Wait, what? Something weird's going on. See, now that has an extra 160 liters. What is the situation here? Oh, maybe that was right at the size we needed it to be. I mean, this is probably one of the times where I can just resize to fit. If I want 20 and 400. There we go. Okay, so that actually was right about the correct size. Okay, so what should we call this, by the way? Downrange LV. LV1, launch vehicle. We'll call it early. Early downrange LV1. 150 km, 500 SP sounding payload. Alright, so this bad boy is then going to need a big ol' fuel tank. 1.3 meters. Also, this needs to... we need some colors here. Like, we gotta do something more interesting. White paint. We do a pattern? How do we do the pattern? Where is that? Yeah, we need something more interesting. Let's do this one. And then you need to have some looks. Sides. There we go. What are the options? How about... I like a lot of these. Let's do that one. All right, and then we can recolor it, you know, with white paint or light gray paint. I don't like the red paint, but it's a little out there. Yeah, let's go with it. Give it a splash of color. Okay, anyway, fuel plus engine equals go. And I believe we don't need high pressure. Is that right? It would tell us in the menu here, yeah, it's not a high pressure. It does need ground support clamps to be able to ignite, which means I actually need support clamps before I think it will tell me the delta V. I'm just gonna use the basic squad ones here. And there you go. We've got 70 seconds of runtime. The reliability is crap though at 78%. But we can get up to 70 seconds, so we'll want to make this a little longer until we get to $75, right? Plus a smidge. So that is a very tall rocket. You pay a lot for the height on a pad, so I actually think this is too tall. I think what we should do is make it a little wider and squatter. So what we'll do for that is go to 1.5 meters? I don't know. How many meters do we want? 1.6, 1.7, 1.8. I don't know what a good size is. Let's do 1.8. That'll be my... I feel like my brain is telling me 1.8 was something someone else said at some point. Maybe it's not. And now we will configure... There's so many little buttons in here. It's hard to find the right ones. And we'll do 500 energy and resize to fit. Okay. Tons, 20 tons. So this is confusing to me. Why do we now have 4,000 EC available when it didn't make it taller? What just happened? So it's 343 millimeters. And if we go up to 20 tons, oh, it did make it a tiny bit longer. Interesting. Okay. But you can't reduce the maximum charge by reducing the length. So you have to do that in the GUI. I get it. Okay. All right, there we go. Anyway, there is a better version of the rocket, which now doesn't need to be quite as long to get our 70-second burn time. +5, plus a few. We'll go to 80 seconds. That is a rocket. I think it needs to be a little pointier. Oh, that's crazy. Whoa! Yeah, we're not gonna do that, but that's hilarious. We're gonna go with a little bit, yeah, more like a... I don't know what the most efficient is, to be honest. But I think... we'll go with peaked 1, I think. Okay, so we've got our 80 seconds, which is 5 seconds past full reliability, and then now we need to protect the airstream. So one thing you can do is you can pop open the FAR analysis, go to transonic design, show cross-sectional area curve. And you want this to not have a bunch of wiggles in it, because then the wiggles increase the average pressure coefficient curve or whatever. I don't fully understand this, but you basically want wave drag to be minimized. And so you want things to be smooth. So what we can do is we can throw in a fairing, an interstage or boat tail fairing. So we'll do a boat tail adapter. And I don't know if they're all the same. I think they are. And it's more just about looks, but we'll just do the flat version. And you have to put it upside down because you want the boat tail on the bottom. And now we do base size 1.8. And then the top of the fairing is going to close around the engine. So it'll be like 0.8 or something. The height is 0 because that's where the actual attachment happens. But the extra height is where the fairing will end up past that. So we want the height there to basically be 0. And then the extra height goes to 3. And then we need to change the shape, I think. Yeah, cylinder start, cylinder end. Yeah, we basically want it to be a cylinder for longer. So it'll go for like a meter before it starts coming in. So now if we grab our fairings, you gotta flip them upside down, plop that on there, and something went wrong. Shouldn't be poking out that far. Oh, there we go. Okay. And there you go. That is fairings. Ta-da. So now we have this beautiful... Does that look like a different size? Both 1.8 meters, but it feels like those fairings are like slightly too small. And it even has a little bump in on the wavefront thing. That's definitely not right. Interesting. I'll just stick with the 1.8 because I know it's technically the right number. All right, and then we need fins, so this thing can fly straight. What a monster this is. Just a freaking bean. A long bean. All right. Aerodynamics. Oh, I forgot to put experiments on it as well. Let's do that. Thermo. Barometer. Turn them all on. Perfect. Okay. And then we'll throw fins in there. Do these contribute to center of mass? They do. We'll leave those off for now. And now I'm thinking we can move these down to the bottom, where they will have more of an attitude control. And then we want local offset. Slide that on in. Now, I don't think that's enough, so we're gonna have to modify these a bit. A little longer. Oh, there we go. Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. And then these need to not get hit by the fins. I'll put them there. And then we have to light the engine first because it has some spool up time. Oh, and then we can turn off the fairing decoupler. Now, I do want to note for everyone, watch the tooling cost over here. 28,000. Turn off fairing decoupler. 21,000. Decouplable fairings have a much higher tooling cost than regular fairings, so just be careful. Don't use decouplable fairings unless you need them. If you need them, fine, but if you don't need them, then don't pay all that money for it. Let's go with the orange bottom. All right, and then what about the strength, the mass strength multiplier? Let's just bring it down to 0.25. Does that really help our delta V? At 0.35, we've got 2339, 2347. I mean, 10 more delta V is 10 more delta V. If our fins break, we'll make them stronger. And that's it. We might as well simulate it just to see what happens. I should save it first. Of course, we'll need a new launch complex for this bad boy. And like I said, we probably won't actually get to the end of this contract in this episode, but we'll at least test this once or twice. So we'll go to Ascent Profile. Now, I'm not going to lie, I don't really understand the PVG thing. We'll probably deal with that more when we're actually launching things into orbit. But the classic Ascent Profile works fine for doing like a gravity turn-esque thing. And you can set... I just like to set it at altitude rather than speed when you start turning. And then by changing the ending altitude and the turn shape, you know, you can get a variety of path shapes. So let's go to like 4 kilometers and then you tilt over and we'll go to 35 degrees and we'll do an end altitude of... We need to get to 140 kilometers. So we do want to go up quite a bit. So maybe I'll actually turn this to like 45 degrees. So we'll try that. Whoa. It always does that. It's messing with the controls. But yeah, and then let's get our A4 here. Our avionics. We can also decrease our communication. How are we? 380 watts? I wonder what all is using power. Why do the clouds look so weird right now? I think they normally look better than that. Screenshot here. And our apoapsis is not looking very high. So I'm thinking we're going to need to reduce our curvature a bit here. Yeah, we didn't go up enough. And we probably are going too much over, I'm guessing, if we hyper warp here. Let's see what our horizontal gets to. Oh yeah, we're going way too much over. Okay, so restart here, and we need an ascent profile that is far more vertical. You know, there's this weird thing I wish you could do, which is have some sort of place you could click on your craft to take notes, and those notes would exist in the VAB and in the launch. All right. Sorry about that. Discord noise. Apparently I turned off streamer mode. One second. Okay. Anyway, back to what I was doing, which was this. Edit ascent path. So we need to go higher first and then start tilting over. So really we just need, I think, this to be like 300. And then it doesn't change this line properly, but you'll notice if we reload into this scene, it'll change where that white line is, which is, I think, the atmosphere line. Alright, and then we'll hyper warp, see where this ends up. One goes to 136, so still needs to go more up. Revert to launch. So what do I change? The start altitude? Could go up before it even turns. But then it likes to turn a really sharp corner. So let's go, let's keep that on 5, and then we'll just make the angle lower. We'll go to like 60%. Or even 65. We really don't need to go that far over. Hyper warp. There we go. 155 kilometers apoapsis. And let's see what we get for downrange distance here. It's also at the bottom of our ascent stats. We might not have enough. Interesting. Okay. This is a little tight. These contracts are tight in the early. I mean, we could always make the fuel tank a little bit longer. Could give ourselves like a couple more seconds. I think I've shaved off weight everywhere we can. Oh no! Oh my gosh. Just kidding. Just kidding. I bet you guys saw this mistake happen when it happened and you were screaming at your screens. When we made this bigger, we forgot to reduce the sounding payload back down. So we're carrying an extra 1 ton compared to, well, it should be a lot less, 500.1. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, that helps. Why did that? No, that's supposed to be 80. But yeah, it was 20. I mean, we get 100 delta V from that. Basically. 500.1. All right. Let's try this again. And I'm guessing, oh, I can't launch it. I can simulate it though. I'm guessing now it's gonna work with pretty much whatever angle I send it at. Another 100 delta V is pretty huge. So now the angle is going to matter a lot less. I'll put a little bit of a lower angle now. We'll go with 60. And hyperwarp. By the way, my hyperwarp settings, if you're curious, are attempted rate is 8, physics accuracy is 1. And that way, it's not inaccurate. Alright, look at our apoapsis. 180k, and I'm guessing we have more than enough downrange distance as well. Let's see. I guess we need hyperwarp before we get out of the atmosphere. Okay. Are we not? Oh, it's 140k for space? I think space is 140k. Yeah, there's the music. All right, downrange distance 150 before we even hit the atmosphere. So yeah, we're good to go. Sweet. Okay. So this will do it. Revert to VAB. This is where I wish I could take notes on like what ascent profile I had set for it. You know what I mean? I guess I could put that in the description. The ship description. I already forgot what stats I had though. Shoot. Something like 60 degree, 300 kilometer, plus 5 km turn. Something like that. Should do it. All right, there you go. Our early downrange is good to go. Let's go ahead and call this an episode here. We'll work on integrating this and actually doing the mission in the next episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Definitely let me know what you think down in the comments. I love Kerbal Space Program, and RP-1 is so cool. I can't believe it's taken me this long to discover it, but it's also had a lot of time to cook, which is exciting. So it's really awesome. And I really encourage you to try it out. The failures are scary, and there's a lot of scary stuff going on. So if you're new to Kerbal Space Program, maybe try the base game first. But at the same time, if you're interested, the tutorial is really great. The wiki is really great. So I highly recommend checking it out. And yeah, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. I also want to let you know that I have a Discord. It's called Krydax. And over there, there's lots of people. We talk mostly about Factorio and strategy games that I play, but there's lots of people who love Kerbal Space Program over there too. So come hang out at Krydax. There's a link in the About section. And if you'd like to support me making videos, you can do that on patreon.com/Krydax. Also a link in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.